Namaskar. Friends, today through right angle, I like to share some thoughts on a thing called MOBOCRACY. Why I decided to think over it, and after thinking it over, sharing my thoughts with you people is this, that day before yesterday, as you know that now there is the last phase of electioneering there in the United States. I think on Tuesday they will be electing who their new president will be, and this is between former President Donald Trump and, as you know, the present Vice President Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris, as you know, is half Indian. Mother was a Tamil Brahmin. I think they migrated from Tamil Nadu. She was a scientist, a doctor essentially, but a scientist, and married a black gentleman there who also had migrated from somewhere in the Caribbean. That marriage, didn't prove to be a success story, and they were raised. Kamala and her sister were raised by the mother. But then that's a different story. So day before yesterday, what happened? That Donald Trump made an important speech, and there obviously it is the election season, and he was trying to get votes from the Indian diaspora. And as you know, I have discussed this thing before also through this platform, that how the Indian Americans happen to be most prosperous and powerful community now there in the United States. So perhaps to cultivate them and to get their votes, and particularly when his opponent is half Indian, Trump made some remarkable statement. Of course, one can say there is a continuity even in that, because he also had, when he first time became president in 2016, during that electioneering also he had made that speech, and he says that the way the Hindus are being abused all over the world, some sort of Hindu phobia has grown up, and he is against that, and he wants that Hindus in US, Canada to be safe. And in that context, he made a particular mention of Bangladesh, and how in Bangladesh the Hindus are being now persecuted, their temples are being burnt, and this particular point that Donald Trump made was significant in the sense that that Bangladesh, the regime has been changed forcibly, and that's a different story. I will not go very deep into it, but the fact remains, it is the Americans who did it. The elected government of Sheikh Hasina, who actually had won the election few months back, the way her regime was toppled, and that Sheikh Hasina now is under India's shelter and staying somewhere here in Delhi. That's a different matter. But the point is, a legal, legitimate, and democratically elected regime was toppled with the American backing and help. And how this took place? This took place by organizing, one can say, this street violence. The mobs were organized in the sense that people came, they took over the important roads, buildings in Delhi, and so much so that the police and the armed forces did not dare to even remove them or fire at them. The point is that, and the way, of course, some elements from armed forces and police might have joined hands with them, but the point is that through this mob violence, Sheikh Hasina, who was elected by the Bangladeshis from all over the country. When the election takes place, that they are elected by from all parts of the country. But here what happens, a particular place is chosen, and that happens to be the national capital, and the mobs collect and they forcibly remove the government. So that is what I call MOBOCRACY. MOBOCRACY in the sense, here some mobs are organized. They do not constitute, or they do not represent the majority in the country, but are so organized and they are so violent, and in a way they succeed in forcing the legitimate authorities, whether they are the police or whether they are the army or whether they are the legitimate representatives of the people like the Prime Minister and MPs, to abdicate and run away. Why? Because they all are scared of their lives. So if you cannot vote out, or you cannot remove a regime peacefully or constitutionally through your country's electoral system, there you fail. That means there you fail to garner the people's mandate or people's support. But you are so overbearing, and you think that it is our ideology, our things that must prevail in the country, and we must have power, nobody else, and then you force them to run away. That means it is not democracy, it is MOBOCRACY. So in my considered view, the most powerful and the or rather notable success as far as my memory goes, particularly in the recent years, did manifest there in Bangladesh capital Dhaka. And as I said, that who are the people behind it, that's a different story, but I am cutting it short by saying it is an open secret. These Americans were strongly behind it, because this Muhammad Yunus, whom they have appointed, he is very personal friend of the Clinton Foundation, and then how he has been supported by that philanthropist come billionaire businessman called Soros, who I'll talk of this Soros little later, because why I'm saying this thing, because they have got strong implications for India, and how things are also being organized in such a manner. I'll come to that aspect a little later, but the point is this, that this Muhammad Yunus and the people who are now in power illegally, they all were propped up very systematically, and the planning was quite impeccable, and the what we call the deep state in America and in other countries, and they played a very active role in removing Hasina. And why they removed Hasina, that also is another long story, because she did not get along with the Americans. They wanted, their geopolitical interest clashed. They wanted, I think that is what Hasina says, one particular Saint Martin Island, the Americans wanted to have a base, and even in their northeast. As one side told you, Bangladesh map is exactly like that of India. Our northeast also happens to be the northeastern part, rather region or in the border of Bangladesh too. So in that part particularly, as you see, some these Christian tribals, these Buddhists, they also wanted some sort of their semi-independent region and something like that, and to which or rather which was supported by the Americans, not directly through the government, but then there are people like Soros, the so-called NGOs funded by Soros, and various policy elites. They did talk of that. That is what Sheikh Hasina says. The Americans could not digest this fact, and they wanted her removal because she has been there in power for the last 15-20 years, and so she had to go. And how she had to go? And as I said, it is through what I explained now, through the MOBOCRACY. And in that context, President Trump's speech day before was quite significant. It caught my attention. That's why I am before you today. And interestingly, after Bangladesh, the Americans and the West, particularly the Europe, they also are trying to experiment this model in Georgia, which incidentally went to polls last Saturday on October 26th. Georgia is a Eurasian state that connects the Central Asia and this West Asia. It is near the Caspian Sea region to Europe, and on one side there's the Russia, another side is Iran, another side is Turkey. It's a small country. It's not exactly small country, but people are less. I think it is 3.7 million or so. But geopolitically a very significant country, because through that many pipelines and gas lines that are being planned to go to Europe by bypassing the Russian mainland. Is very, very significant. From there, they'll go to the Mediterranean Sea through land, they'll go cross over to the Europe. That's it. But it is a geopolitically very significant area. And as you know, Georgia was one of the former 15 Soviet Union's republics. And incidentally, Stalin hailed from Georgia. He was from Georgia. And in fact, after their so-called independence, when the Soviet Union disintegrated in 1992, the first president or prime minister was Edward Shevardnadze. I really find these Russian names very difficult to pronounce. He was Soviet Union's, if my memory serves right, I think was the foreign minister, and he became the first Georgian president. But that's a long story. So the point is, of all the former 15 Soviet republics in Georgia, you still find a lot of people, they share their sentimental attachment with Russia, and there are equally powerful sections of the Georgians who want to join Europe, for instance, and they want to join NATO and European Union. The so-called color revolutions, that you might have heard. Anyway, that's a complicated story. Let's not go into that, because initial years, as I told you, the pro-Soviet people, after getting independent, the pro-Moscow people controlled, or they got elected as president or prime minister. They are ruling the country. But then when this Western sentiments grew, and the West, particularly the Europe and the US, they wanted expanded NATO. They wanted to bring almost all the former Soviet republics. A systematic attempt was made to be a part of European Union, or for that matter NATO. So to insurrect them, again in certain ways these mob democracies were organized then, and they did succeed. For instance, I think they succeeded in 2004, if I am not mistaken. which color revolution, pink, I'm not exactly sure of that, but so they did succeed, and pro-Western leaders did come to power there in Georgia, and so the things have been like that. And in 2012, one such pro-Western president, I have forgotten his name, he got embroiled in various corruption scandals, and in 2012 he was thrown out, and through democracy, I mean, there in the elections a new government came, that is called Georgian Dream, and that particular party has been in power since 2012. So but that government became a little bit realistic, because they realized, because of their geopolitical position, they will not nurture that adversarial relations with Moscow, because of their strong cultural, economic and other links. So, and they in any case wanted to avoid any war. What was happening is this, these Western elements there and the supporters of Georgia, they wanted immediately to join the European Union, and this election was portrayed as a mandate for where Georgia will be heading at. If they would have won, then what precisely would have happened is that, and the Americans and the Europeans were supporting them left, center and right, and there was a strong fear that another second front will be opened against Russia, like Ukraine is fighting, they also would have to fought, another front would have been opened against Russia, so that the Russian entire focus there in Ukraine would have been diverted, and in the process it was promised Georgia that he would become a member of European Union, and he would also be considered for becoming a member of NATO. So that was on the other hand, this Georgian dream, and I think the Prime Minister's name is Irakil Kovak DJ. So they said that hey, hold on, we have to be here, be very, very careful. We are not with Russia. In fact, they are in the government when Russia invaded Ukraine. In the United Nations, this Georgian government also condemned the Russian aggression in Europe, and I think in 2022 or 23 they also applied, formal application was given to the European Union to become a member. By any stretch of imagination, it is not a pro-Moscow regime, but they are very particular that they cannot afford to open the second front there, where against Russia. So no war. They wanted peace. So these are the main muddas. These are main issues on the basis of which the elections were fought. And it so happened that this incumbent regime of the Prime Minister, they won the election. They got 54% votes, and they won. But Georgia has got a president. She's a lady. Her name is Salome Zoruabich. She is extremely pro-European and pro-West. But under Georgian constitution, the president happens to be a ceremonial head. The real power, as here in case of our India, like India, the parliamentary, the prime ministerial system, where the prime minister is the head of the government. They said that we are not going to accept this election, like you hear me, I said that I am coming to India after this, and the same thing, we do not accept this election results, these machineries were wrong, and the Russians came and stole the election, foreign influence, as if they were not influenced by America and the West, ridiculous thing. So they said that we are not going to accept these election results. And surprisingly, they say that, we didn't have another, it is an unequal race and things of that sort. But you will be surprised to know that many international observers were stationed in Georgia to monitor this election. And the most important was one of them, that is called Organization for Security and Cooperation of Europe, OSCE. So it had sent its representative. There are very senior officials. They are monitoring the election, and you will be surprised to know what they said. This election took place last Saturday. I think results came on Sunday, and last Monday they did talk of this, that though it was an unequal race, this sort of thing, it was very intense, very close fight, but elections were done in a very orderly manner. All rules were followed. People were given a clear-cut choice. They came and exercised their franchise. Right? It was that means if after that 54% of the votes the incumbent regime there, the government got, you cannot say that this is the Russian victory. We will not allow this government to continue, and this president again collected mob last Monday or Tuesday. Thousands of people came, and the mob was there in the capital Tbilisi, and demanding this election must be declared null and void, and there is no alternative for the Georgians other than joining Europe and European Union and NATO. That means if the people, whether they want it or not, but then they want, I think these very people want, like these elements want, and they are supported by US and the European countries, that either our way or highway. That means if we are not there to govern Georgia next, then under no way the so-called elected government will not be allowed to continue, and we will be taking over. It is exactly the same thing what happened in Dhaka. That means you collect a move, and then you are trying to experiment that model. That of course it is one round has taken place. One never knows what is going to happen in the next few days. Maybe the American election results they are waiting for. Suppose Trump doesn't win and Kamala Harris manages to win. You never know. This MOBOCRACY will be getting the further strength there in Georgian capital, and they want to make it a success story as it has been in the case of Bangladesh. So that is what I mean by MOBOCRACY. That means you do not bother whether the leaders have got the popular support or not. The people of the country are there behind them or not. That is not material. What is material is that your followers, your supporters, or just because you hate the present regime, they do not support your they do not support, or rather they do not take any part in the furtherance of your broad geopolitical objectives. They must be removed. They were removed in Bangladesh, and you are trying to remove them again in Georgia. In a way, you had succeeded, as I said, to a certain extent in the early years of this present century through so-called color revolutions. So nothing will happen. Any government for that matter which does not agree with Washington or London or Paris or born must not be allowed to function, and or rather, their broad strategic objectives are not shared by these regimes, that they must be removed by hook or the crook. Now, my last point that I'm trying to make. Don't you think, in a way, these are the things that are being experimented in our own country in the last few years here in India? I talked of George Soros, his NGOs, and George Soros, is so powerful. He had threatened, 7-8 years back. He one of his principal mottos is to remove, Modi. And as it is, the American, they don't, of course, American, foreign policy is a very complex, process. One cannot, generalize it. But the fact, remains that if in America you find lots of very, policy elites who want to strengthen their relations and ties with India, similarly, another, sections are there who really hate India, and particularly Narendra Modi and our policy of pursuing our own strategic autonomy, like we are not snapping our ties with Russia. We must not have any sorts of dealing with, including even the business, economic, and we must join them in fighting the Russians in Ukraine, and blah 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 blah, and the sort of narratives that are being promoted over the years in India, like, oh, it is not a true democracy. India under Modi is fascist, and then this, as I said, that is why I talked about the Hindu phobia. The Hindus, the rising Hindus means the so-called Hindutva balas. There are no places now in India for any dissent, for Muslims, for Christians. These sort of narratives that are being played, and now more serious, these deep state, as I said, that these anti-India policy makers there, in whether in America, Canada, the way the Khalistanis are being propped up, and the way it is made as if one Khalistani terrorist life for them is much more important than the friendship with a country like India, and that is precisely what is happening. And then Trump also said against that. So the point that and what exactly happened, that how I think when was it in 2020 or 21 when Trump came and visited India, the so-called protests were made against CAA, as if and we are giving citizenship, this anti-CAA, the Shaheen Bagh, the half of Delhi, where the same exactly mob democracy. You come, capture portions of this thing, and it is not a coincidence. Immediately after that, the farmers, they all want to march to Delhi. You see, the basic idea is this: you cannot remove Modi electorally. You cannot remove BJP electorally, or rather, I'm not talking in terms whatever the regime here is, but then you want to have your people there, and when you know that it is not possible electorally because the overall people in the country are with this government, or they have got the popular mandate, the best thing is that exactly what happened in Dhaka: come and seize Delhi. MOBOCRACY, another thing, through farmers, through these protesters. Absolutely there is groundless sort of thing. You seize Delhi. That is why it is extremely important, in my considered view, that this government, the Modi government, should be very, very particular. And thank God, I think they won this election in Haryana. Otherwise, it would have been very difficult, because, as I said, the only way they can remove this government They will be trying through this democracy by seizing Delhi. Delhi's road, public space, then taking over, and then they will be fleeing away. I think that's what happened in Dhaka. That's what is being tried there, the Georgian capital. That may happen because they have been trying to do it in Delhi. So the bordering states are extremely important for the safety and security of all of us, who live in Delhi. And of course, I am talking of the government and this thing, and to ensure that our constitution prevails. And this is precisely what is happening, and what they are doing in the process. They have really tried to create, or rather, they have been already given these, sowed the seeds of division. That's why you see again these narratives by some political parties and some particular political leaders who cultivate, who will be really weakening you, and they will be talking of dividing in the what, on the basis of what? The best way to divide Indians is talking of caste, religion, this Hindu phobia, Muslims are in danger, the Christians are in danger, and by creating this sort of narratives, you somehow manage through your money power, these Khalistanis, how they are being supported by the money coming from Canada, Europe, or for that matter America. And that's another complicated phenomenon, the narco terrorism and deep state, the way they are being supported. So the point is this: seizing Delhi, organized mobs, the mobs will be taking over, and the elected officials elected in the government, they go to hell. They'll be taking over everything, in the sense that parliament is wrong, the Supreme Court is idiotic, the election commission, that has no role whatsoever. It is no longer independent. As long as they win, everything is fine. If they do not win, then that doesn't become, they remain independent. If the judiciary gives verdicts in their favor, all right. If they do not give the verdict in their favor, that has been compromised. So the mobs will be coming, they will be writing a new chapter, they will be drafting a new constitution, and what not. So the danger of MOBOCRACY, this is the biggest danger to Indian democracy today. So we all must be very, very careful of this. I think let me stop here, and thank you very much for your patience to listen to me. Namaskar.